Brielle Dawson knew the moment she saw Midnight Echo enter the auction ring that she would do anything to own him, even if it meant spending every cent she'd saved from 10 years of working as a veterinarian specializing in equine medicine. The black stallion moved like liquid darkness, his coat gleaming under the auction house lights, muscles rippling with each calculated step. She'd been tracking this horse for months, ever since she'd heard whispers that the Patterson estate was liquidating its racing stock after the patriarch's death. This wasn't just any racehorse. This was a descendant of Northern Dancer with a temperament perfect for rehabilitation and a racing record that spoke of untapped potential. At 3 years old, he'd barely scratched the surface of what he could become. The auctioneer's voice boomed through the packed hall. "We'll start the bidding at $50,000. Brielle's hand shot up immediately. She'd come prepared with $75,000, which represented her entire savings account, a small inheritance from her grandmother, and a loan she'd taken against her car. Her best friend Megan had called her crazy when she'd outlined the plan 2 weeks ago over wine and Thai food. "60,000, called a voice from the back of the room. Brielle didn't hesitate. 65,000. The other bidder countered instantly. 75,000. Her stomach dropped. She turned in her seat to locate the competition and felt her breath catch. The man stood near the back wall, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. All sharp jawline and intense eyes currently fixed on the horse with the kind of focus that made her nervous. He held his phone loosely in one hand, bidding paddle in the other, looking completely relaxed while systematically destroying her dreams. 76,000, she called out, pushing beyond her limit. She'd figure out the extra 1,000 somehow. He didn't even blink. 100,000. The crowd murmured with interest. Brielle felt panic rising in her chest. She couldn't compete with someone who jumped bids by 25,000 like it meant nothing, but she also couldn't walk away. Midnight Echo deserved better than whatever fate awaited him with someone who probably collected racehorses like other people collected art, never giving them the individual attention they needed. 105,000, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. The man finally looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. His eyes were a striking blue-gray, the color of storm clouds over the ocean. Something flickered across his face, surprise maybe, before his expression smoothed back into calm determination. 125,000. Brielle's heart hammered against her ribs. She was done. She had nothing left to bid with. But she stood anyway, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. 126,000. It was a desperate move, a pointless gesture that would only delay the inevitable. She didn't have $126,000. She barely had 76,000. But she needed him to know she wasn't giving up. That Midnight Echo meant something to her beyond money or prestige. The man's eyebrows rose slightly. He studied her for a long moment, taking in her faded jeans, the practical button-down shirt she'd worn because she'd come straight from the clinic, the determination written across her face. Then he raised his paddle. 150,000. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Brielle opened her mouth, though she had no idea what would come out. An apology to her bank. A prayer for a miracle, sold. To paddle number 47 for $150,000. The gavel came down with a finality that felt like a door slamming. Brielle sank back into her seat, defeat washing over her in waves. She'd lost. After months of planning, of dreaming, of imagining Midnight Echo at her small training facility, she'd lost to someone with deeper pockets and probably no real understanding of what that horse needed. She sat through the next 3 lots in a daze, barely registering the animals parading through the ring. When she finally stood to leave, her legs felt unsteady. She needed air, space to process the disappointment crushing her chest. The corridor outside the auction hall was blessedly empty. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes and taking deep breaths. $75,000 still sat in her account, waiting to be spent on a dream that had just evaporated. She'd find another horse eventually. It wouldn't be Midnight Echo, but maybe that was okay. Maybe she'd built him up too much in her mind. "Excuse me." She opened her eyes to find the man from the auction standing a few feet away. Up close, he was even more imposing. He had to be at least 6'3", with the kind of presence that suggested he was used to commanding rooms. But his expression was surprisingly uncertain, almost apologetic. "I'm Vincent Crawford," he said, extending a hand. She shook it automatically. His grip was firm and warm. "Brielle Dawson. I wanted to apologize for that bidding war. I didn't mean to price you out so aggressively." He ran his free hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically nervous for someone who just dropped $150,000 without blinking. "I've been tracking Midnight Echo for a while. I didn't expect competition." "Neither did I," Brielle admitted. The irony of it stung. "I guess we both did our homework." "You're a veterinarian," Vincent said. "It wasn't a question. I overheard you talking to someone about a clinic before the auction started. Equine specialist." "I run a small rehabilitation and training facility about 40 minutes from here." She crossed her arms, defensive. "I know it probably looks like I was in over my head with those bids, but I had a plan for Midnight Echo. He's been mismanaged. His training records show inconsistent handling, and I think that's why he never quite reached his potential on the track. With the right approach, he could be incredible." Vincent's expression shifted, interest replacing the apology. "I read the same thing in his records. That's exactly why I wanted him. I've been building a racing stable, but I'm trying to do it differently than the traditional model. More focus on animal welfare, longer training periods, individual attention." Despite herself, Brielle felt a flicker of curiosity. That's not exactly the standard approach for someone looking to make money off racing. "I'm not in it for the money." He said it simply, as if it was obvious. "I made my money in renewable energy. Sold my company 2 years ago. The horses are a passion project." She processed this information slowly. Vincent Crawford. The name tugged at her memory. Crawford Sustainable Solutions. That was mine, yes. Brielle had read about the sale in the business section of the newspaper. Crawford Sustainable Solutions had revolutionized solar panel efficiency and been acquired by a major energy conglomerate for an amount that had made headlines. She couldn't remember the exact figure, but it had been in the billions with a B. "So you're not just rich," she said slowly. "You're billionaire rich," he shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "I don't usually lead with that. But you do lead with outbidding people by $75,000. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Fair point. Look, I know I won the auction, but I heard what you said. 126,000 when you clearly didn't have it. That kind of determination means something. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow to discuss Midnight Echo's training program? I'd value your professional opinion." Brielle studied him carefully, looking for signs of condescension or pity. She found neither. He seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. "You want to hire me as a consultant? I want to have a conversation with someone who clearly cares about that horse as much as I do. Everything else we can figure out from there." He pulled a business card from his wallet and offered it to her. "My personal number is on the back. Think about it." She took the card, her fingers brushing his briefly. "I'll think about it. He nodded and turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you didn't get him. I could see what he meant to you. After he walked away, Brielle stared at the card in her hand. Vincent Crawford's name was embossed in simple black letters, no flashy titles or unnecessary information. Just a name and 2 phone numbers. She should throw it away. She should go home, have a good cry, and start looking at other horses tomorrow. Instead, she found herself saving his number in her phone. She texted him that night at 11, sitting in her small apartment with a glass of wine and her laptop open to Midnight Echo's Bloodline records. Her thumb hovered over the send button for a full minute before she pressed it. I'll meet you, but I have conditions. His response came within seconds. I'm listening. If I consult on Midnight Echo's training, I want full authority over his rehabilitation program. That means I decide his schedule, his diet, his exercise routine, everything. You can be as involved as you want, but final decisions on his care go through me. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. That's more than fair. I wouldn't want it any other way. My facility at 10 tomorrow morning. I'll text you the address. I'll be there. She set down her phone and immediately questioned every choice she'd made in the last 3 hours. Working with Vincent Crawford meant staying close to Midnight Echo, but it also meant working with a billionaire who probably expected everyone to cater to his whims. What if they disagreed on training methods? What if he undermined her authority? What if he was only offering her this consulting position out of guilt, but beneath all those worries was something else? Curiosity. Excitement. The memory of how he'd looked at that horse, with the same reverence she'd felt. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Vincent's facility turned out to be 40 minutes from her place in the opposite direction of her own small ranch. She pulled her aging truck through iron gates and down a paved driveway lined with white fences. The main stable was a stunning structure of wood and glass, modern but warm, with at least 20 stalls visible from the outside. Several paddocks stretched out behind the main building, lush with spring grass. 2 horses grazed in the nearest field, their coats gleaming with health. She parked next to a black Range Rover and sat for a moment, gathering her courage. This was so far outside her usual world. Her facility consisted of a renovated barn with 6 stalls, a small indoor arena, and a lot of determination. This looked like something out of a magazine spread. Vincent appeared in the stable doorway before she'd made it halfway across the parking area. He traded yesterday's suit for jeans and a dark Henley that showcased his athletic build. Somehow he looked even more intimidating without the formal wear, more real and immediate. Brielle, I'm glad you came. His smile was genuine, transforming his serious face into something warmer. Come on, I'll give you the tour before we talk about Midnight Echo. He walked her through the facility with obvious pride, pointing out the climate-controlled stalls, the state-of-the-art veterinary suite, the training arena with specialized footing designed to reduce joint stress. Every detail spoke of massive investment and careful planning. But what impressed Brielle most was the obvious care in the horses themselves. They were calm and alert, their stalls spacious and clean, their feed premium quality. She stopped to examine a bay mare in the 3rd stall, running her hands over the horse's legs with practiced efficiency. No heat in the joints, good muscle tone, excellent hoof condition, she murmured, more to herself than Vincent. You've got a good farrier, the best in the state. He comes every 6 weeks without fail. Vincent leaned against the stall door, watching her work. I told you I was serious about doing this right. She straightened, wiping her hands on her jeans. I can see that. I'm impressed. This is a beautiful setup. But you're wondering why someone with all this would care so much about getting one more horse. The thought crossed my mind. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. My grandfather raised horses in Kentucky. Nothing fancy, just a small operation breeding working stock. I spent every summer there from the time I was 8 until he died when I was 16. He taught me to respect the animals, to see them as partners rather than property. When I sold my company and found myself with more money than I'd ever imagined, this was the first thing I wanted to build. A place that honored his philosophy, but with the resources to really make a difference. The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't a bored billionaire looking for a hobby. This was someone driven by genuine passion and old grief. "He'd be proud of what you've built," she said softly. "I hope so." He pushed off from the stall door. "Come on. Midnight Echo arrived this morning. I want you to see him." They found the stallion in a corner stall at the end of the barn, larger than the others with a window overlooking a private paddock. He stood in the center of the space, head high, ears pricked forward. When he saw them, he snorted and pawed the ground once, a challenge and a question all at once. "He's magnificent," Brielle breathed. Seeing him here in this perfect environment should have made her happy. Instead, it made her chest ache with what might have been. "He's anxious," Vincent observed. "Look at how he's holding his weight. He doesn't trust this place yet." She glanced at him with renewed respect. He'd read the horse's body language accurately, something many owners never learn to do. He's been moved around a lot in the last year. 3 different trainers, 2 different stables. He needs consistency and patience. "How long do you think before he settles?" "Depends on our approach. If we rush him, could be months. If we take it slow, build trust, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before he really relaxes." She pulled out her phone, opening the Notes app where she'd sketched out her preliminary ideas the night before. "I was thinking we start with groundwork. No riding, no track work, just building a relationship. Spend time in the stall with him, hand walking, basic grooming. Let him learn that we're predictable and safe." Vincent moved to stand beside her, looking at her notes over her shoulder. He smelled like cedar and something crisp she couldn't quite identify. "What's this about diet modification?" His records show he was on a high-performance racing diet, lots of grain and supplements. But he's not racing right now, and all that energy without an outlet can make a horse crazy. I want to dial it back, increase his hay, let his system reset. Makes sense. Vincent was close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. She shifted slightly, unnerved by her awareness of his presence. "What do you need from me?" "Time, mostly, and trust. This isn't going to be a quick process. I've got plenty of both." He met her eyes and something passed between them, an understanding that felt like the beginning of a partnership. "Should we discuss your consulting fee?" Brielle had thought about this all night, running numbers and weighing options. "I want partial ownership." Vincent's eyebrows rose. "Explain." "You paid $150,000 for him. I'll give you $75,000, half of what you paid in exchange for 50% ownership. We make all major decisions together. If he races and wins, we split the purses. If he goes to stud, we split the fees. Equal partners." She waited for him to laugh or dismiss the idea outright. Instead, he rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "That's not a consulting arrangement, that's a partnership. Yes, you'd be investing everything you have, I know. What if I said no?" "Then I'd consult for you, take whatever fee you offered, and spend the whole time wishing I had more say in Midnight Echo's future." She crossed her arms, defensive but determined. "You asked yesterday what Midnight Echo meant to me. He represents every reason I became a vet. The chance to help an animal reach its full potential, to undo the damage of improper training, to build something extraordinary from scratch. I can't do that as a consultant. I need to be fully invested, literally and figuratively." Vincent studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he extended his hand. "Partners." She stared at his hand, her heart suddenly racing. This was insane. She barely knew him. She was about to commit her entire savings to a partnership based on one conversation and a gut feeling. She shook his hand. "Partners." His grip was firm, warm, and lasted a beat longer than necessary. When he released her hand, Brielle felt the imprint of his touch like a brand. "I'll have my lawyer draw up the partnership papers," Vincent said. "Should be ready by end of week. In the meantime, when can you start?" "How about right now?" They spent the next 4 hours with Midnight Echo. Brielle moved slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones, letting the horse investigate her on his terms. Vincent followed her lead, his large frame surprisingly gentle as he stroked the stallion's neck. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm that surprised them both. "You're good with him," Brielle commented as Midnight Echo lipped at Vincent's shirt pocket, searching for treats. "I'm following your example." He produced a carrot from his pocket, offering it flat-palmed. "My grandfather always said you could tell a lot about a person by how they handle a horse." "What am I telling you?" He considered the question seriously. "That you're patient, observant, that you lead with compassion but don't tolerate disrespect. That you've worked hard for everything you have and don't take shortcuts." The accuracy of his assessment made her feel exposed. "That's a lot to get from watching me brush a horse. I'm good at reading people. It's how I built a successful company." He moved around to Midnight Echo's other side, running his hands down the horse's legs, checking for any swelling or heat. "For what it's worth, I think my grandfather would have liked you." Something warm bloomed in Brielle's chest. "I think I would have liked him too." They settled into a routine over the next 2 weeks. Brielle came to Vincent's facility every morning at 7, worked with Midnight Echo until noon, then headed to her own place to handle her existing clients. Most evenings she returned to Vincent's, drawn back by her need to check on the stallion and, though she wouldn't admit it yet, by Vincent himself. He was always there, often working in a converted office above the stables, but he made time every day to help with Midnight Echo. They talked while they worked, sharing stories about difficult horses they'd handled, comparing training philosophies, debating the ethics of racing. Brielle found herself looking forward to these conversations as much as the work itself. Vincent was intelligent and thoughtful, quick to laugh at himself, genuinely interested in her opinions. He treated her as an equal despite the massive gulf in their bank accounts, never pulling rank or dismissing her ideas. "What made you focus on rehabilitation?" Vincent asked one evening. They were walking Midnight Echo in the outdoor arena, letting him stretch his legs and explore the space without any pressure. "I saw too many horses written off as problem animals when really they were just traumatized or in pain," Brielle said. "In vet school, I did a rotation at a racing stable where they were ready to put down a 3-year-old colt because he kept bucking off riders. I examined him and found a spinal injury that was causing him constant pain. We treated it, gave him 6 months off, and he went on to win a dozen races. I was hooked after that. What happened to the colt? Retired to stud in Kentucky. Last I heard, he'd sired 2 stakes winners." She smiled at the memory. "His owner sends me a Christmas card every year with updates." Vincent was quiet for a moment. "You saved his life." "I just listened to what he was trying to tell everyone. Most people don't bother to listen to horses." "You listen," Vincent said softly, "to everything." She glanced at him, caught by something in his tone. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The air between them felt charged suddenly, heavy with possibility. Midnight Echo chose that moment to nudge Vincent hard enough to make him stagger, breaking the tension. They both laughed, the moment passing but leaving something warm in its wake. The partnership papers arrived on Friday. Brielle signed them in Vincent's office, her hand shaking slightly as she wrote her name on the line that made her half owner of a horse worth $150,000. Vincent signed below her, his signature bold and confident. "To Midnight Echo," he said, raising a glass of champagne he'd produced from a small fridge. "And to partnerships." "To partnerships," she echoed, clinking her glass against his. They drank, and Brielle felt the weight of what she'd done settle over her. There was no going back now. She was tied to Vincent Crawford for the foreseeable future, bound by their shared investment in a temperamental stallion who might never race again. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt exhilarated. Spring melted into early summer. Midnight Echo transformed under their consistent handling, his anxiety gradually giving way to curiosity, and then confidence. The breakthrough came 6 weeks after the auction. Brielle arrived at dawn to find Vincent already in the barn, leaning on Midnight Echo's stall door with a look of pure delight on his face. "Watch," he whispered as she approached. The stallion stood calmly in the center of his stall, eyes half closed, one hip cocked in the universal sign of a relaxed horse. When Vincent made a soft clicking sound, Midnight Echo's ears swiveled, but he didn't startle or tense. "He slept last night," Vincent said. "I mean really slept. I came down around 2 to check on him and he was lying down, fully flat out. First time I've seen him do that." Brielle felt tears prick her eyes. A horse that felt safe enough to lie down and sleep was a horse that trusted its environment. "We did it," she whispered. "He trusts us." Vincent turned to her, his face alight with joy, and without thinking she threw her arms around him in a hug. He froze for half a second, then his arms came around her, strong and sure. He was solid and warm against her, and Brielle realized with a jolt how perfectly she fit against his chest. She pulled back quickly, embarrassed by the impulse. "Sorry, I'm so happy. Don't apologize." His hands lingered on her waist for a moment before dropping away. "I'm happy too. You were right about everything. The slow approach, the patience, all of it." They started riding work the next week. Vincent had hired a professional jockey for the actual training rides, but Brielle insisted on being present for every session. She stood in the center of the arena, watching critically as Midnight Echo moved through his paces. The stallion was responsive and eager, his movements fluid and powerful. "He's ready for the track," the jockey reported after the second week of rides. "Not race ready, but ready to start real conditioning work." Brielle looked at Vincent. They discussed this moment, planned for it, but now that it was here she felt a flutter of nerves. Track work meant pushing Midnight Echo, asking more of him than they had so far. "What do you think?" Vincent asked. "I think we trust what we've built with him. He's strong enough for this now." She took a deep breath. "Let's do it." They started track work at dawn when the air was cool and the light was soft. Brielle stood at the rail beside Vincent, stopwatch in hand, as Midnight Echo and his jockey rounded the first turn. The stallion's stride was magnificent, eating up the ground with powerful, even movements. "Look at him go," Vincent murmured, awe in his voice. They clocked him at respectable times for conditioning work, nothing that would turn heads but solid enough to build on. Over the next month, his times improved steadily. The jockey reported that he was eager to run, responsive to commands, and showed no signs of the temperamental behavior that had plagued his earlier career. "We should think about entering him in a race," Vincent said one evening. They were sitting on the fence outside Midnight Echo's paddock, watching the stallion graze in the fading light. Nothing major. A small stakes race, just to see how he handles the competition. Brielle's stomach knotted with anxiety and excitement. The Rosewood Derby is in 6 weeks. It's a decent purse, good horses but not championship level. Could be a perfect test. Let's do it. Vincent turned to look at her, and in the golden hour light his eyes were more green than gray. Are you nervous? Terrified, she admitted. What if we're wrong? What if we've pushed him too hard, or not hard enough, or what if he falls apart in a real race? Then we'll deal with it together. He reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. The gesture felt natural, like they'd been holding hands for years instead of weeks. That's what partners do. Brielle looked down at their joined hands, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. When had this stopped being just about the horse? When had Vincent become someone she thought about first thing in the morning and last thing at night? When had his smile started feeling like sunshine? Vincent, she said softly, I know. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I feel it too. This complicates things. Everything worth having is complicated. She met his eyes and found them full of warmth and want and something that looked a lot like hope. We have a partnership agreement. We're business partners. We can be more than one thing. He shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me you don't think about me the way I think about you. She couldn't tell him that because it would be a lie. She thought about him constantly. She found excuses to see him, stored up stories to share with him, lit up when she heard his voice. Somewhere between the auction and today, she'd fallen for him completely. I think about you, she whispered. All the time. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his lips met hers, the world narrowed to the point of contact, to the gentle pressure and the warmth and the rightness of it. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss. She sighed against his mouth and felt him smile. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks. Why didn't you? I didn't want you to think I was using the partnership as leverage, or that I expected anything from you because because of the money. Brielle pulled back enough to look at him properly. I never thought that. You've never acted like your money made you better than anyone. It's one of the things I love about you. The word hung between them, huge and terrifying. Vincent's eyes widened. Love, she could take it back. Laugh it off as a figure of speech. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. I'm falling in love with you. I'm probably already there if I'm honest with myself. His answering smile was brilliant enough to rival the setting sun. Good, because I'm completely in love with you. Have been since you bid $126,000 you didn't have on a horse you'd never touched. He kissed her again, thorough and claiming, and Brielle let herself fall into it, into him. Into the terrifying, exhilarating reality of being in love with a billionaire who kissed like he'd been waiting his whole life just for her. They walked back to the main house hand in hand, neither willing to let go. Vincent's home was a sprawling ranch-style building with floor-to-ceiling windows and clean modern lines. Brielle had only been inside once before, briefly, to use the bathroom. Now Vincent led her through the front door and into a living room dominated by a stone fireplace and comfortable leather furniture. Stay for dinner, he said. I make a decent pasta and we should celebrate. Celebrate what? We kissed. We admitted we have feelings. That's not exactly groundbreaking. It's groundbreaking for me. He tugged her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. Maybe ever, so yes, I want to celebrate. She couldn't argue with that logic. She stayed. They cooked together, moving around his kitchen with surprising coordination, talking and laughing and stealing kisses between stirring sauce and boiling pasta. Over dinner, They planned Midnight Echo's training schedule leading up to the Rosewood Derby, but the conversation kept drifting into more personal territory. Favorite movies, worst first dates, dreams for the future. I want to expand my rehabilitation facility, Brielle said, twirling pasta around her fork. Add more stalls, maybe hire an assistant. I've had to turn away clients because I don't have the space or the time. What's stopping you? Money, mainly. The property I'm on now is leased, and the landlord won't approve major renovations. To really grow, I'd need to buy my own place, and that requires a down payment I don't have. She shrugged, trying to hide how much the limitation frustrated her. It's a someday dream. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. What if someday could be sooner than you think? What do you mean? There's 40 acres on the north end of my property that I haven't developed. Good land, already fenced with water access. What if we built your facility there? You could expand as much as you wanted and we'd be neighbors. Brielle set down her fork carefully. Vincent, that's generous, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's an investment. We're partners on Midnight Echo, and he's thriving because of your expertise. Imagine what we could do with more horses, more space. We could build something really special. A rehabilitation center that becomes a model for the industry. He reached across the table to take her hand. And selfishly, I want you close. I've gotten used to seeing you every day. I don't want that to change. I couldn't afford to pay you rent on 40 acres, not for years. So don't. Call it a long-term loan or a partnership investment or a gift from someone who loves you and wants to see you succeed. We'll figure out the details. He squeezed her hand. Just don't say no because of pride. Say no if you don't want it, but not because you think you can't accept help. She sat with that, turning it over in her mind. Her entire life she'd been independent, determined to make it on her own without relying on anyone. But Vincent wasn't offering to save her. He was offering to build something together, to be partners in more than just horse ownership. I want it, she said finally. I want to build something with you. His smile could have lit up the entire house. Yeah, but I pay you back somehow. We structure it as a real business arrangement, not a gift. Deal. We'll have the lawyers work it out. He stood, coming around the table to pull her to her feet and into his arms. Have I mentioned that I love how stubborn you are, once or twice? She tilted her face up for his kiss, sinking into the feeling of his mouth on hers, his hands spanning her waist, the solid strength of his body against hers. They kissed until the rest of the world fell away, until the only things that existed were his touch and her heartbeat and the promise of everything ahead. The 6 weeks before the Rosewood Derby flew by in a blur of training rides and planning sessions and stolen moments together. Vincent and Brielle fell into a rhythm that felt like coming home. Most nights she stayed at his place, sprawled on his couch reviewing training schedules or curled against him in his bed, talking until they fell asleep tangled together. He was an attentive boyfriend, thoughtful in ways that surprised her. He learned that she loved sunflowers and started keeping them in every room. He memorized her coffee order and had it waiting when she arrived at the barn. He listened when she talked about difficult cases at her clinic and offered genuine insight, not just empty platitudes. "You're too good to be true," she told him one morning. They were lying in his bed, the early sun streaming through the windows, neither quite ready to start the day. "I'm really not." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Ask anyone who worked for me at the company. I was demanding, sometimes unreasonable, always pushing for more. But you're not like that with me. Because you're not an employee, you're my partner, my equal." He rolled to face her, propping his head on one hand. "And because I love you, that changes everything." She traced the line of his jaw with one finger, marveling at how comfortable this felt, how right. "I love you too, even when you snore. I don't snore. You absolutely snore. Like a chainsaw with a head cold. He tickled her ribs in retaliation, and she shrieked with laughter, trying to escape. They wrestled playfully until he pinned her beneath him, both breathing hard, the playfulness shifting into something headier. Say I snore now, he challenged, his voice dropping low. You snore, she said breathlessly. But I love you anyway. He kissed her until she forgot what they'd been arguing about, forgot everything except the feel of him and the overwhelming rightness of being exactly where she was. Race day dawned clear and bright. Brielle woke tangled in Vincent's sheets, her stomach already knotted with nerves. He was already up, standing at the window with a cup of coffee, wearing nothing but pajama pants and looking unfairly attractive in the morning light. Couldn't sleep, she asked. He turned, his expression softening when he saw her. Been up since 5, too anxious to stay still. Me too. She climbed out of bed and went to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Whatever happens today, we did our best for him. That's all we can control. I know. Doesn't make it easier. He set down his coffee and turned in her arms, pulling her close. No matter what, I'm proud of what we accomplished. We took a horse nobody believed in and gave him a real chance. That matters. They arrived at the track 3 hours before post time. Midnight Echo was already there, settled in a temporary stall, being fussed over by their jockey and a groom. The stallion looked magnificent, his black coat brushed to a high shine, his eyes bright and alert. When he saw Brielle and Vincent, he nickered softly. That's my boy, Brielle murmured, running her hands over him with practiced efficiency, checking for any signs of soreness or stress. You ready to show everyone what you can do? The horse lipped at her hair, which she took as agreement. The pre-race minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. They watched as Midnight Echo was saddled and led to the paddock. The jockey's colors were simple navy and silver, the closest thing Vincent had to family colors since his grandfather's operation had never been formal enough for registered silks. Brielle stood pressed against Vincent's side as they watched Midnight Echo parade with the other horses. He looked good, she told herself. Calm but energized, ready but not nervous. Ladies and gentlemen, the horses are approaching the starting gate for the Rosewood Derby. Vincent's hand found hers, gripping tight. Here we go. The gates crashed open. 8 horses exploded onto the track in a thunder of hooves. Midnight Echo broke clean, settling into 4th position as they rounded the first turn. The early leader was a flashy chestnut who'd won his last 3 starts. Midnight Echo tracked him easily, his jockey keeping him rated and relaxed. Wait for it, Brielle whispered. Don't rush. Let him find his moment. They turned for home. The jockey made his move, angling Midnight Echo to the outside. The stallion responded instantly, his powerful stride lengthening, eating up ground. He swept past the 3rd-place horse, then the 2nd. With an 1/8 of a mile to go, only the chestnut leader remained ahead. Brielle stopped breathing. Vincent's hand was crushing hers, but she didn't care. Midnight Echo drove forward, inch by inch gaining on the leader. The crowd roared. The announcer's voice climbed to a fever pitch. Midnight Echo is flying. He's got the lead. No, they're neck and neck. This is going to be close. They hit the wire together, so close that Brielle couldn't tell who'd won. The photo sign went up. She turned to Vincent, finding him already looking at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. No matter what, that was incredible, he said roughly. Did you see him? He gave everything. He was perfect. She threw her arms around his neck and he lifted her off her feet, spinning her once. The announcement crackled over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. By a nose, Midnight Echo, Brielle screamed. Vincent kissed her hard, tasting like joy and salt from his tears. Around them, the small crowd they'd brought erupted in cheers. They ran to the winner's circle, where Midnight Echo was already being led in, his sides heaving but his head high and proud. Their jockey was grinning from ear to ear. "What a horse!" He dug in when I asked and never quit, never felt anything like it. Brielle ran her hands over Midnight Echo, checking him over even in the midst of the celebration. He was tired but sound, pleased with himself in the way horses got when they knew they'd done well. "You beautiful, perfect animal," she whispered. "You showed them all." The winner's circle photos were a blur of smiles and champagne and flowers draped over Midnight Echo's neck. Vincent kept his arm around Brielle's waist the entire time, holding her close, his pride evident in every line of his body. Later, after Midnight Echo had been cooled out and checked by the track vet and settled in his stall with extra carrots and praise, Brielle and Vincent stood alone in the empty barn. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "We did it," Brielle said softly. "We really did it. You did it. Your training plan, your instincts, your expertise." Vincent turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "I just provided the space and the money, you provided the magic. It was both of us, that's what partnership means. Speaking of partnership." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait for a more romantic setting, but this feels right. This moment, this place, after watching our horse win. It's perfect." Brielle's heart stopped. "Vincent, what are you doing? Hopefully not screwing this up." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a simple solitaire diamond set in platinum with smaller stones along the band. "I love you. I've loved you since you stood up in that auction house and bid money you didn't have on a dream you wouldn't let die. I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you. Horses, businesses, a family, whatever you want. Just say you'll do it with me." He took a shaky breath. "Brielle Dawson, will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, at his face, trying to process the enormity of what he was asking. They'd only been together for a few months. It was too fast, too much, too impossible. It was also exactly what she wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise and a celebration, and the beginning of everything. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Brielle admired the ring sparkling in the fading light. "Your grandfather would have loved this," she said. "All of it. The horse, the win, us." "Yeah," Vincent agreed, his voice thick. "He really would have." They stood there as darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, listening to the quiet sounds of the horses settling for the night. Midnight Echo's soft breathing from his stall, the rustle of hay, the distant call of an owl. The life they were building together, one moment at a time. The engagement made headlines in the horse racing press. Local vet and billionaire investor to marry. Most of the articles focused on their partnership and Midnight Echo's unexpected win, painting it as a fairy tale romance. Brielle found the attention overwhelming, but Vincent took it in stride, used to media interest from his business days. "Just smile and don't read the comments," he advised. Nothing good ever came from reading internet comments. They spent the summer planning the wedding and Midnight Echo's next races. The stallion went on to win 2 more stakes races, cementing his reputation as a legitimate competitor. Each win felt like a vindication of their training methods, proof that patience and care could overcome a troubled past. The new rehabilitation facility broke ground in August. Vincent had hired a team of architects who'd worked with Brielle to design something functional but beautiful. 12 spacious stalls, a heated indoor arena, a specialized veterinary suite and office, and a small apartment where Brielle could stay during difficult cases. The budget made her dizzy, but Vincent waved off her concerns. "This is an investment in our future," he said. "In the work you love and the difference you're going to make." They married in October, a simple ceremony at sunset in the main arena of Vincent's facility. Brielle wore a flowing dress the color of champagne, with sunflowers in her hair. Vincent wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. Midnight Echo watched from his paddock, decorated with ribbons for the occasion. Megan served as maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. "I can't believe you're marrying a billionaire," she whispered during photos, "and that you met him bidding on a horse. This is insane." "I know," Brielle agreed, watching Vincent laugh with his best man across the arena. "Best kind of insane, though." Their first year of marriage was a whirlwind of building and growing. The rehabilitation facility opened in December, and within weeks, Brielle had a waiting list of clients. She hired 2 assistants and started offering workshops on equine rehabilitation techniques. Vincent supported her completely, showing up to help with barn chores when she was overwhelmed, talking through difficult cases late into the night. Midnight Echo retired from racing at age 5, sound and healthy, with earnings that more than covered his initial purchase price. They stood him at stud, and his first crop of foals showed exceptional promise. Every time a mare was confirmed pregnant with his baby, Brielle felt a rush of pride and satisfaction. "We made the right call with him," Vincent said one evening. They were sitting on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set over their property. Brielle was curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders, her hand resting on the slight swell of her stomach. 6 months pregnant, and she still marveled at the changes in her body. "We did," she agreed. "He's going to be a great sire." "Did you see the conformation on that bay filly from the first crop? She's spectacular. Takes after her father." Vincent's hand covered hers on her belly. "Speaking of offspring, have you thought more about names?" They'd been debating baby names for weeks. She wanted something classic. He wanted something meaningful. They'd agreed on almost nothing except that they were both excited and terrified in equal measure. "I like Victoria for a girl," Brielle said. "We could call her Tori." "Victoria Crawford." Vincent tried it out. "I like it. Strong name. What about for a boy?" "I was thinking maybe William, after your grandfather." Vincent went very still. When she looked up at him, his eyes were bright with emotion. "Really? He's the reason we have all this. The horses, the facility, each other. Seems right to honor him." He kissed her temple, his hand tightening on hers. "William Vincent Crawford. It's perfect." Their daughter arrived in late spring, red-faced and squalling and absolutely perfect. Victoria Grace Crawford had Vincent's blue-gray eyes and Brielle's determination, evident from the way she latched onto nursing with single-minded focus. They brought her home to the ranch house, wrapped in a blanket embroidered with horses. Midnight Echo, usually indifferent to visitors, came to the fence of his paddock to investigate when they carried Tori outside for the first time. He snuffled at her gently, his enormous head dwarfing her tiny body. Brielle held her breath, but Vincent just smiled. "He knows," Vincent said softly. "He knows she's ours." They fell into a new rhythm, one that included midnight feedings and diaper changes alongside training schedules and breeding decisions. Brielle cut back her hours at the facility but couldn't stay away completely. She'd bring Tori in a carrier and work one-handed, the baby sleeping peacefully to the sounds of horses and activity that already defined her world. "She's going to grow up thinking this is normal," Megan commented during a visit. She was holding Tori, making faces that the baby seemed to find fascinating. Billionaire dad, horses everywhere, her own rehabilitation facility in the backyard. "I know," Brielle said, watching Vincent lead a client's horse through its paces in the arena. Even after all this time, the sight of him still made her heart skip. "We'll try to keep her grounded. Good luck with that." Megan transferred Tori back to her mother's arms. "But honestly, if any kid is going to handle this life well, it's yours. Look at her parents. You're both so normal despite everything." Brielle didn't feel normal. She felt extraordinarily blessed and occasionally terrified that she'd wake up to find it had all been a dream. But then Vincent would come find her, dropping a kiss on her head and reaching for their daughter, and the solidity of her life would reassure her. This was real. She'd built this, they'd built this, one decision at a time, starting with a bidding war over a difficult horse. Midnight Echo sired a stakes winner in his second crop. The colt, a powerful bay with his father's athleticism and his dam's speed, won 3 races as a 2-year-old before being sold for an amount that made Brielle's head spin. Their share of the sale price went directly into expanding the rehabilitation facility, adding another 10 stalls and a specialized swimming pool for therapy. "We're building an empire," Vincent said, surveying the construction with satisfaction. "A horse empire." "Your grandfather's dream on steroids," Brielle agreed. She was pregnant again, just barely showing, and the summer heat was already making her uncomfortable. "Though I think he'd be a little overwhelmed by the scale. He'd love it, and he'd love you." Vincent pulled her close despite her protests about being sweaty. "You gave me everything he wanted for me. Purpose, passion, a family. I couldn't have found better if I'd searched the whole world." Their son arrived in February, during a late winter storm that knocked out power to half the county. William was born by candlelight in their bedroom, attended by a midwife who'd barely made it through the snow. He came into the world quiet and watchful, taking everything in with serious eyes. "He's going to be thoughtful," the midwife predicted, cleaning him gently. "An old soul." She was right. Will was a careful, observant baby who studied the world around him with intense focus. Where Tori had been all noise and energy, Will was contemplative. He loved being held facing outward so he could watch everything, especially the horses. They baptized both children on the same warm June day, surrounded by friends and family and horses. Midnight Echo stood at the fence throughout the ceremony, a witness to the continuation of everything he'd started by simply being a horse worth fighting for. "Do you ever think about that day at the auction?" Brielle asked Vincent that night. The children were asleep, the house was quiet, and they were curled together on the couch with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd learned each other completely. "All the time," Vincent admitted. "I think about you standing up to bid when you knew you couldn't win. That kind of courage, that refusal to quit, it's what made me notice you. I think about how you could have just outbid me into oblivion, but you offered me a partnership instead. You didn't have to do that. I did, though. I saw something in you that day, someone who cared as much as I did, someone worth taking a chance on." He kissed her softly. "Best decision I ever made. Even better than selling your company for billions. Infinitely better. The money bought me options, but you gave me a life worth living." Brielle settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, thinking about the impossible chain of events that had brought them here. A difficult horse, an auction, 2 stubborn people who wouldn't walk away. Sometimes the best things in life came from refusing to quit, from fighting for what mattered even when the odds seemed insurmountable. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "Forever." Outside, in his paddock under the stars, Midnight Echo dozed peacefully, the king of his domain, the cornerstone of everything. A horse who'd been written off and forgotten, who'd found 2 people stubborn enough to see his potential and patient enough to unlock it. His legacy wasn't just in his winning record or his successful offspring. It was in the family he'd helped create, the love story he'd sparked, the empire built in his name. Years passed. Tori grew into a determined 7-year-old who rode her pony with fearless joy. Will, at 5, preferred helping in the barn, carefully grooming horses 3 times his size with single-minded focus. The rehabilitation facility had become nationally recognized, with veterinarians bringing difficult cases from across the country for Brielle's expertise. Vincent had settled fully into his role as stable manager and Brielle's partner in every sense. He joked that he'd traded running a billion-dollar company for shoveling stalls and liked the new job better. The truth was evident in his contentment, in the way he moved through their life with satisfaction and joy. Midnight Echo, now 14, held court in his paddock like the dignified elder statesman he'd become. His offspring were competing at tracks nationwide, carrying his bloodline and his story forward. Visitors to the facility always asked to see him, drawn by the legend of the difficult horse who'd become a foundation sire. On the 10th anniversary of the auction, Brielle and Vincent returned to the same house where they'd met. The annual sale was in full swing, but they weren't there to bid. They came to speak on a panel about rehabilitation and second chances in racing. It started with refusing to give up, Brielle told the audience. I couldn't walk away from a horse I believed in, even when it seemed impossible. That stubbornness changed everything. Sometimes the best partnerships come from conflict, Vincent added, his hand finding hers on the table. We both wanted the same thing. Learning to build it together made all the difference. After the panel, they walked through the stables where horses were waiting for tomorrow's sale. A young woman stood at one stall, her hand outstretched to a nervous chestnut mare, speaking in low, soothing tones. Reminds you of anyone, Vincent murmured. Brielle smiled, remembering herself 10 years ago, determined and hopeful and scared. Should we tell her it gets better? I think she's about to find that out for herself. They left the barn hand in hand, walking toward their truck and the life waiting for them. 2 kids who needed bedtime stories, a stable of horses who depended on them, a partnership that had started with a bidding war and grown into something neither of them could have imagined. No regrets. Vincent asked, opening her door. Brielle thought about everything they'd built, every choice that had led them here. The wins and losses, the challenges overcome, the love that sustained it all. Not a single one. He kissed her there in the parking lot, long and sweet, a kiss that tasted like coming home. Good, because I'm planning on at least 50 more years of this. Only 50, I'm being conservative, didn't want to scare you. She laughed and kissed him again, then climbed into the truck. As they drove away from the auction house, she looked back once at the place where their story had started, where 2 stubborn people had refused to walk away from a horse and found each other in the process. The best things in life, she'd learned, were worth fighting for, worth refusing to quit, worth the risk of looking foolish or losing everything. Because sometimes, when you held your ground and followed your heart, you didn't just win the horse. You won everything that mattered. Behind them, the auction house faded into the distance. Ahead, their life waited, full of horses and children and love. The fairy tale that had started with a simple refusal to back down and had blossomed into something more beautiful than either of them had dared to dream.